Hi, thanks for tuning in. This is GameCast. This is our very first episode, so bear with us. I have with me Alex,
Hello.
Brad, and
Yo.
Mr. G. And we're going to be talking to you about soundtracks, and not just the soundtracks themselves, but how they enhance the gaming experience. A lot of people think it's the graphics or it's the story and the character development. Well, in reality, it's a mixture between all of it, and a lot of people don't seem to give the soundtrack the credit it deserves. Um, so first up to bat, I'm going to give Brad the floor to see what influential soundtracks he has in mind.
Thanks, James. Um, I think for me, like in the last, I would say in the last couple um, years, I think the biggest one for me has definitely been the World of Warcraft soundtrack. Um, I know it's an MMO, and a lot of people just kind of blaze through them and just play the actual game, but I think this it's a mixture, like the soundtrack mixed with like the ambiance noise and all that stuff is really really good. Um, but I think it's some of the only soundtracks that I can actually listen to and then like outside of the game and realize and like and start thinking about the game and how much I want to actually like start playing it again. So most of them have been conducted mainly by a guy of the name of Russell Brower. And you can go on and you can download all of the soundtracks for every single game. So there's one for the original, and then there's one for each of the expansions that they put out. Um, but they're absolutely phenomenal, and like I said, it's that one grouping of soundtracks that I can sit there and I can listen to it, and it invokes the same feeling of like how much fun I'm actually having, or I can remember the song and what I was doing when that sort of song was playing or something like that. So I think that for me is the best one. And then like going old school, if I want to pick something else, I mean it's just like anything like in the 8-bit era was just amazing to just go through. I mean it was so it's just like you only had that little chipset to work with, but they did such a good job with that stuff, and it's just like you go back and you pop it in an NES game and it's just like that's you hear just a little you know, they're so limited, but it's so awesome. It's
I
like
completely,
hearing, this things again over after, like when I got Super Mario 3, and I was just like, I'm playing that on my 3DS, and it was awesome to be able to hear that music again.
oh
It's
yeah.
just great. It was good. So I think for me, like right now, the most influential and like my favorite stuff is definitely the World of Warcraft soundtracks for sure. I think those are the ones that have stuck with me over the last, I don't know, that game's been out like what, 7 years now or something like that.
Almost 9.
Yeah, so it's been, well, for me 7 years like I started playing it. So, but it's that one sound, like those soundtracks I can go and like listen to all the time. So that's my pick.
Well, even going off of that, you have everything prior to World of Warcraft. So, Warcraft, Orcs and Humans, the
Oh yeah,
soundtrack just evolves from there. Um,
yeah,
and it's just epic questing music. It just, like you said, it just gets you enveloped into the game and just the whole ambiance of everything. Basically, if you put on a headset, you're in Azeroth questing. So, I mean, I can agree with you. World of Warcraft without the soundtrack would be, nothing compared to what it is today. What about you, Alex?
Um, well, I've got three personal picks. One of the biggest ones was the Pokemon games because um, those tunes, like you can go onto like like Route whatever of Red or Blue or Ruby or Sapphire, and you'll like if you just play the audio, you'll instantly recognize what's from what. It's always got the recognizable intro tune in every single game that they revamp a little bit. Like I recently went on just like iTunes and just downloaded like all the soundtracks from Ruby and Sapphire and Red and Green and everything. You just listen to those and you just imagine yourself walking back all through those paths and everything. Especially a lot of the Ruby and Sapphire ones because that's the Game Boy Advance did a really good job of sound on those games. Just they were more dynamic than more of the beeping and stuff that the older Game Boy games did. Another one I really like is the Unreal Tournament games. When you play those, like the a lot of the songs were done by, I believe, Alexander Brandon. He worked on some of the Jazz Jackrabbit music, I think, as well, and some of the other Epic Games uh, games. Um, but yeah, in Unreal Tournament and Unreal as well, just like every single stage has just like the music almost gives the ambiance to it. Like Hyperblast is one of the great maps from that everybody remembers from Unreal 99 or Unreal Tournament 99, and it's like a space themed map, and so you got like a hyper techno theme to it. Then you have like one that's like an old like Viking galleon, and you have like a kind of Viking theme to it. So I think that kind of plays the dynamic, and it kind of pumps you up when you're playing the game. And just for something out of left field, an arcade game, Tempest 2000. That game has
Comes out of left field.
yeah, that it's really out of left field, but that game, if you ever play it, it has the most like kick-ass techno soundtrack in it. And it's just literally just like I think it's probably got like 2 hours on the soundtrack or something. It's just a long, ridiculous amount of techno tracks that are just all straight techno when you're playing the thing, and it just pumps you up like crazy.
With the Pokemon thing, I was just gonna say, I was like, every time you get on the freaking bike in Pokemon and that music comes on, ugh, it drove me a little bit insane. That's all I gotta say.
Well, it's the only way to quick travel. I mean, you have to listen to it. Either that or you just turn the sound down.
Yeah.
But going off of the Pokemon thing, if you've played Harmonite on the 3DS, it's a rhythm-based game made by Game Freak. So the bonus levels are actually Pokemon themes remastered, and they sound fantastic. If you haven't played Harmonite, I would highly suggest it. It's a really fun game. If you like, I always butcher this name, Theatrhythm, the Final Fantasy one, or if you like any of the like tapping games, Tap Tap Revolution for your iPhone, whatever it is, it's fun, and it's got a nifty little story in it, and again, the soundtrack, fantastic. It's made by Game Freak, so.
I didn't know Game Freak made that. I had no idea.
Yeah, I was surprised too. Actually, Mandy suggested it to me at the like 2 Street Pass events ago.
Yeah.
Matt, how about you? What soundtrack specifically really stuck with you?
Cool. Thanks for having me, James.
What's up, Mr. G?
My
Mr.
couple
G.
I have a couple of favorite music pieces. From the more recent, it's not necessarily a popular game, but it's Frog Fractions.
I knew it.
It was a browser-based game
Yep.
from Twinbeard. That's one of my favorite soundtracks. It has catchy tunes in the beginning that sort of get you in. I mean, the gameplay goes. You want to say it's about learning and fractions, but
But it's not.
But the spoiler is it's not at all. Yes, and that's sort of the joy of that game, is that soundtrack really brings you in.
It even has little to do with fractions.
There are fractions. There are fractions mentioned, just very little fractions. My favorite though is Super Mario World. I believe it was also written by Koji Kondo. It's an outstanding soundtrack CD. When you turn on that Super NES game, you hear the Nintendo bleep, and it starts with the Mario World theme. It's really outstanding. That's one of my favorite themes.
I understand that.
And then another audio piece I enjoy. It's not necessarily. It's more than a soundtrack, but the Grand Theft Auto series, specifically Grand Theft Auto 3, how they laid out those stations, and Chatterbox in particular, which isn't really a soundtrack, but it's
the talk radio, right?
It's a talk radio, yes. That I thought really added to the immersion. Same with all their other sound. Same with the other stations that you could listen to. It was just like you had a radio. What were you gonna say, James?
No, I mean, like you just said it. It makes it real, makes it realistic, gives it what the, I guess, hip kids nowadays. It's a version of Second Life, essentially.
Well, what I like about Grand Theft Radio is it focuses on more of like the classics and stuff. Like you don't see any like modern like metal or like it's all classic rock, some obscure electronica and like stuff like that. Sometimes I think they even throw in a country station. You don't hear frickin' Justin Bieber and Grand Theft Auto.
Well,
Um,
it was a period piece, right? It's like if you go to San Andreas, you had soundtracks primarily from the '90s.
well,
Vice City
right.
was the '80s, and you know,
Well, in like Grand Theft Auto 3, you had like songs like Iran and like all those great like classic songs and everything.
Welcome to
But
the Jungle, I believe, was in there as well.
I
somewhere
believe, yeah, there was either three or yeah, I want to say there was three.
more in yeah, Vice City I think had those.
Probably Vice City, yeah. But yeah, you brought up you just reminded me. You brought up the Super Nintendo, and I had this on the back of my mind. The Mega Man X games, specifically two for me, X2. That's another game that whenever I play through it, I have like rock covers of all the songs from that game all on the radio in my car, saved in my car hard drive. Just because like even just listening, actually, Mega Man Extreme 2, which is the Game Boy Color port of it's a combination of X1 and 2. I think that Game Boy Color port actually has better music than the original SNES versions of the games.
Oh yeah. Also, it's
I
available on the eShop now. So
Extreme 1 is. I still have Extreme 2 actually in my Game Boy Advance. I was just playing it like 2 hours ago actually. Yeah, the intro stage of that game, just as soon as the intro plays at the start menu, it's like, that rock meaty sound. It just like, it pumps you up.
oh
Even
yeah.
the original Mega Man games, like, who doesn't remember like any of the Wily's Castle themes or anything?
Oh, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And then you take the games and you like look it up on YouTube. You look up the Mega Man theme with lyrics by Brental Floss. It's fantastic music. It's very catchy. It's very upbeat. It's a throwback. Like all of these songs just make you want to pull out your NES. And I mean, we keep going back to the NES and keep going back to those older systems, but the soundtracks make the system what it was. And one of my favorite ones was just already mentioned by Matt, Koji Kondo. He made the soundtrack for Yoshi's Island, and if you listen to it,
Outstanding game.
outstanding game, outstanding soundtrack. If you listen to it, I believe it's the opening theme song, and you're listening to it, if you honestly just tune in, you hear a music box, and as the song progresses, the music box gets slower and slower until it finally stops, where the song just stops. But then some benevolent source, turns it, and you hear the key turning, and then the music starts up slowly again and like progresses. Just small details like that, which are honestly unnecessary because they're lost on the average person or like the kid who's playing it at that point in time. But if you go back and you listen to it, or you're playing it, and you can pick those things out, it just makes the game that much better. And I mean, Koji Kondo then goes on to make all the other fantastic soundtracks that he does, and the most influential in my eyes, at least for me as a kid, not necessarily like the soundtrack for this game, but like the soundtracks for the games that he's made. This one is obviously the Club Nintendo Platinum status reward for 2013.
Baller.
The soundtrack for Majora's Mask, but I mean Ocarina of Time. I believe he did Skyward Sword, and I believe he did all the other ones post Ocarina of Time. And I saw Symphony of the Goddesses. It was a fantastic orchestral piece. You can hear all the time and effort that went into this, and how each piece really reflects the environment that it's made for. Gerudo Valley, the Temple of Time, and I heard a little feedback, but all in all, Koji Kondo's soundtracks just send chills down my spine. I don't know if I could play a Legend of Zelda game without the audio. Like I just can't. I might be the only one, but I think Brad would agree.
No, you're not. No, I mean, like that's one of the things that I don't get is there's so many people who are just like they play the games with no sound, and it's just like I can't, it's just like even if it's something like Call of Duty or whatever, something that's just kind of mindless, I can't listen to music or anything else. I have to be listening to the game. Like it's just it's part of the game. It's what inspires gets you into it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
It's
it's
kind of
one
like
of
a
those.
sensory deprivation thing too. Like kind of like gets
Yeah,
you like disconnected from it. It's weird.
yeah.
Immersive is that buzzword.
Immersion, yeah.
Yeah, it's just that you can't. I mean, like it's just you can't not do that with so many. With us, like with your phones and with everything else that we have, that can pull our attention this way and that, and it's just like having the game there and being able to like truly immerse yourself into that. Like you have to have
Yeah.
the music to it. It's just and especially when it's so well done with something like Legend of Zelda when you're going to do something and then you hear the sound, the music build up in the background as you're fighting a boss and it's just like, oh man, like it just makes everything so much better. Like you can't replace that. It's
Hmm.
just it's perfect.
That
And
that chess theme, man.
the chess theme, yeah. Like I mean, the songs are so iconic. You can find a dedicated Zelda player, or even like a casual Zelda player, and you can give them the overworld theme. They will know what
Yeah.
it is. They will know that you're transitioning from Kokiri Forest onto the overworld, and
Yeah.
from there, it's like when you hear the Star Wars theme song, you automatically know that's
Or
Star Wars. Here comes the crawl, and you expect the credits to start rolling.
yeah, exactly. And that's the same thing with Final Fantasy. It's just like that one iconic piece that you hear at the end of your battle when you want.
That's the most. That means you accomplished something.
Yeah,
It's
it's like all right, it's like that's cool. Like I just it's just those little things. Like yeah, when it becomes daytime when you're playing Ocarina of Time, there's that little like it's just it floats into it. It's like you can't replace that.
yes. I can 100% back that up. And then like, you hear these things everywhere. It's not just in video games. People put them as their text ringtones, as their ringers. Just I have the little Zelda chest that you get from the UK version. You open it and it's the chest theme from Zelda. These are ingrained into, I would say, modern day culture, and they're just synonymous with gaming. You can't separate games from the sound. It's unfortunate for people who can't like appreciate it, but it's there, and it is a I you just can't separate it.
Yeah,
There's
it's
no
vital.
simpler way to put it.
Yeah, it's a vital part of the game for sure.
And like the theme, not to play favorites, as you can tell, the theme so far has been Nintendo does put a lot into their soundtracks, but so does Bungie with Halo 2's soundtrack. It was
Oh,
fantastic.
phenomenal. It was great.
It it made you feel like you were Master Chief dropping out of this ship and saving the entire world. Like there's no better feeling than just losing touch to all reality. And it sounds terrible, but that's why you play video games. It's to
Yeah.
do things that you
Yeah.
can't. And looking at upcoming titles, Mario Kart 8 soundtrack from just, the loop we have at work, Brad, or, the videos that we see online, the soundtrack's phenomenal. They just revamped, the music from like Rainbow Road 64 or the
Moo Meadows in Mario Kart 8 sounds outstanding.
It does, it does. And for any of you who haven't like looked anything up of it, if you don't like Nintendo, whatever, just look up the videos for the new Mario Kart and just listen to the sounds and all of the different theme music for each stage. It really just it separates every single stage, not just visually, but you notice the different, themes, the ambiances, and just the overall tone of it based on the soundtrack. Um, I mean, is there any other games that you can think of that is coming up that had like just a fun like within probably the past 6 months or the upcoming ones through the trailers that we've seen that have a soundtrack that is just going to be completely out there.
Well, I have a couple comments before,
Okay.
but I remember back, I want to say a couple E3s ago, E307, the Halo 3 trailer, that music, Enter something, it's escaping me right now, but that trailer music was outstanding, and it's like that made me really feel like, oh, this is gonna be an outstanding purchase just by that Halo 3 trailer music. But you mentioned orchestras, and Tommy Tallarico's Video Games Live is another
Yeah.
outstanding symphony show, and they do a lot of interactivity as well. So it's not just, oh, we're playing a bunch of soundtracks. It's we're playing a bunch of soundtracks and we're getting you involved and showing clips that also bring you, to feel how that music affects those games and what we think about them.
Oh yeah. And even what is it? Super Smash Brothers. I can't believe I forgot the name. Super Smash Brothers. Just it's one of those other games. It takes the soundtracks and it takes the best soundtracks from every single game. Kirby, Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Kid Icarus, Ice Climbers. Unfortunately, they will not be in the next game. Still time, but still. It takes all of these fantastic soundtracks and then it puts them in their iconic stages, and it's like an amalgam of everything that is awesome, and it's just a giant time capsule of all soundtracks from the past and going into the future. I honestly can't see what the gaming industry would be like if they never ended up deciding, oh, we really need a backtrack for this, and instead just was like mindless noises. I don't know.
It's great stuff, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
because you have
you got to do it.
games like
DuckTales.
Spit Trip Runner.
Oh, fantastic.
And then, yeah, DuckTales, remastered or even the original. Fantastic.
DuckTales.
The,
Woo!
the original was, the original was one of the reasons people wanted that game remade, was because that music was so iconic and
Yeah.
so 8-bit.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, I saw a video. Well, I mean, I guess it's not a few years ago now; it's a while ago. But they did an interview with David Jaffe, who was the game director on God of War. And
Mm-hmm.
originally for God of War, they were thinking about doing like heavy metal music during like the game, and then they were just like, he's like, we tried it and it just didn't work, so we just got these epic orchestral scores and we put those in there, and it's just like, it would have been such a different game if I was like sitting there and like hearing these heavy metal guitar riffs. It would have been so weird. It's just like, oh, you have to have the right soundtrack. Like it makes a difference. It makes a huge difference in a game.
Yeah, I think metal music only works for kind of like just run and gun shooters like Doom.
What about Brutal Legend?
Brutal Legend, that too.
Well, I mean that's
Feedback
based
metal.
on heavy metal music.
Right? I can't believe we forgot this. This was pointed out by a friend of ours, Allison. She pointed out Journey and Flower and Flow. Simple games, fantastic soundtrack, wouldn't be half of what it is without it. I actually think Journey won a few awards specifically just for its soundtrack.
Yeah.
If any of you haven't played those games, I think there's a triple pack you can buy. It's like $20, $25
Mm-hmm.
at your preferred game retail store, whatever that may be.
If you buy them digitally, you get cross-buy. You can get them on PS4, PS3, and Vita.
That too, yes. You're not a Sony rep, but yes, that is true.
I'm not.
Or there's also Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh,
Brad's kicking himself. He didn't think of it. I didn't think of it either.
why?
The little gremlin that's off to the side did.
There's so many that you can pick, though.
Yeah, we don't have enough time, obviously, to do them all. We could do a follow-up, because obviously afterwards we're going to start kicking ourselves for not thinking of these fantastic soundtracks that just, like, blew our childhood away. But,
I got another one. It was just announced either yesterday or this morning. I forget, but Harmonix, the company well known for Rock Band and the original Guitar Hero developers. They're bringing back a sequel to one of their favorite PS2 games called Amplitude.
Yes.
They just released well, they're not bringing it back yet, but they announced a Kickstarter so they can bring it back.
Yeah, I know, but I saw that. Oh my God, Amplitude's so good.
Frequency, which came before Amplitude, was also really well done. And on the subject of harmonics, they also have Fantasia Music Evolved coming out for the Xbox One later this year. So that's another music-themed game.
All right. Is there any last-minute thoughts before we sign out? Alex, you've been kind of quiet the whole time.
I've been thinking just a lot of the things a lot of the games that we've been mentioning are all kind of like the retro old school, and that kind of got me thinking at one point. Like you were saying, like at some point, people could say, "Oh, just put meaningless noise in it." It's kind of like I think at some point there's just kind of a less is more kind of thing. Like especially with like a lot of orchestral soundtracks, like Halo 1, 2, 3 with Martin O'Donnell, I believe, is the composer for it. That those are all great orchestral pieces. And then when I played Halo 4, I don't believe Martin O'Donnell worked on it. I believe they got some other orchestra to do it or whatever, and it honestly just kind of feels like generic orchestra. Like I couldn't really pick out any tracks that are really memorable from that game other than like the menu like song.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like back in the day they had, like a NES had like 4 tracks. There's like a square wave, circle wave, and a triangle wave, and like I think one other bass track or something. It's like that's all they had, and yet they could squeeze like like tons of atmosphere out of like a 30-second loop or something.
Yeah, and you apply the less is more to survival horror games like Outlast, Amnesia, whatever it is. The fact that there's sometimes no soundtrack and little like sounds that are in the background far away, that really just like you said, less is more.
Yeah, but that's all. Games like that though, Amnesia and everything, like that's almost an entire other conversation with like sound design and stuff like that, like sound effects and ambience and all that.
All the technicalities that we can't get into tonight. But thank you guys. Thank you all for joining me here at GameCast. We hope you enjoyed the little conversation that we had. You can follow us on Facebook. Yes, peace sign Brad. I see what you're doing. Or you can follow me on Twitter at Flutterscore if you want to keep up to date on everything. If you've got questions or suggestions on the next topic, or you just want to let us know what your favorite soundtracks is, just leave a comment on YouTube or on our Facebook page. Signing out is Mr. G. I remembered. Brad, Alex, and James. Have a good night.